as I mentioned before, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It means a lot in terms of giving your time representing Staymates, which I got that wrong in the beginning of our conversation. So thank you for correcting me on this one. Mariah Obiedzinski. I hope I pronounced that right.
Mariah Obiedzinski.
Yeah, here you go.
You got the last name. That's the toughest part.
Exactly. But for our audience, again, if you're listening or watching this episode, you can find her on LinkedIn. That's the best location. Again, that's where we virtually met and connected. So all the good links, including Staymates website, is going to be included in the show notes. So go and check their services, products, get to know Maria a little bit more as well on LinkedIn. So obviously providing here value for the audience, as always, talk about marketing and all these different things. Would love to, first of all, just to uncover and discover, how did you came about Staymates? What got you the industry? Just, what happened?
Yeah, I love this question. So I actually got into marketing from a series of follies. I went to school to be a print journalist and graduated college about the time that the bottom fell out of the newspaper industry, which is really what I wanted to do. And here in our local market, I wasn't able to build the career I wanted to build in radio. And then I ended up getting hired at the phone book company in the marketing department, which kind of dates me a little bit. But as the need for phone books declined, so did my job there. And I found myself eventually as a marketing assistant at a durable medical equipment company. That really sparked my love of healthcare content, healthcare writing. And so over the years, I've worked at a couple of different agencies that focused either on healthcare or higher education. And now here at Staymates, we're focusing on both. So it's a really exciting kind of bumpy road that got me here, but it's a career that I really enjoy from a functional perspective and just from a philosophical perspective.
Interesting. So, and Staymates Communications Incorporated, right? 1923. Is that the year?
Yes. We just celebrated our centennial last year, which is really exciting. The company has evolved quite a bit in 100 years.
Wow, that's incredible. I don't come across a lot of, obviously there's a few, but you don't come across that often companies that have been around for 100 years. So that's awesome. Yeah. So you working right now with Staymates and obviously working with major academic and medical centers too?
Yep, so, absolutely, all across the country.
How do you tailor these content strategies to meet, because they're all having unique needs of their own, right? Because those are separate industries. So what's the way in terms of creating that, tailoring that content to those specific needs and challenges of these specific industries? Like, is there, like, how do you differentiate that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it really starts in two buckets, if you will. What are the business goals of the institution? Are they looking to attract patients? Are they looking to attract trainees, researchers, and so forth? And then who are the people in the audience that would be best served with their content? So you think about, what are we trying to say? What is the story we're trying to tell? But at the end of the day, it comes around to, what is the story? What is the information that the audience needs to receive? What questions are they asking that's getting you to a point where you say, as an institution, we need to be the authoritative leader, issuing the answers to those questions, even before people are asking them. It's really, the baseline is knowing your audience.
So how do institutions collect that feedback? Is there some sort of a, I see people on LinkedIn, they're doing polls. I mean, obviously as an institution, they have, email database and whatnot. So, but for up and coming, because maybe there's some up and coming, future leaders listening to this episode right now. So how they can, because the best way to improve is listen to the audiences and pivot and shift that way to a degree, right? At some point, maybe you want to be a leader and just to, disrupt the industry. But what's the best way of listening to the people in terms of gathering that feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So you nailed it right there. You can directly ask, you can send out surveys, you can send out emails, see what sticks, see what people respond to. But you can also use tools on your website to look at what people are engaging with on their first entrance into your site. Are they coming in through your blog? Are they coming in from social media? Are they coming in from those emails that you've been sending? And another track that I think a lot of people maybe don't think about is in customer service, you're getting these complaints, you're getting these props and kudos. What are you doing with that information aside from, one-on-one conversations? Are they asking questions there that maybe would be broadly applicable to a larger audience? Use those tidbits that they're giving you as first-party data to build content around that.
That's right. So can you emphasize how important is data? Because, I'm guilty of myself when it's like, I don't like paperwork. I don't like documents. Obviously, being inside of a company, there's loads of it that you have to go and sort through and just put your signature on or whatever that is. So, but we as marketers, we love the look, the whatever, the user experience, right? So how these days, especially these days, is important data research and gathering that data to improve whatever business you're running?
Yeah, great question. One thing we see a lot in higher ed and healthcare is massive accumulation of data. It's just part of being an academic institution. Data gathering is important. Data gathering is part of your daily workforce. But the thing that is missing is usually the and then, the what next, the what happens with that data. So
Yeah.
if you on your team don't have a person that's keen on analyzing that data or spotting trends, seeing what's changed from month to month, year to year, you might work with a partner organization that can help you identify people coming from this area really are interested in XYZ. People coming from this area are interested in ABC. Here's some content that is missing on your site that could help answer those questions. Or here's some that exists already that maybe just needs to be bolstered up a little bit to answer some of those questions that people are asking. If you're gathering all this data, it doesn't really serve you or your audience unless you're taking that next step to implement it.
So gathering data is one thing, looking at the data is another thing, right? Because you can go and find an analyst, data analyst, and hire, if the company is in a position to do that, and get an individual to look at the data. But the other piece that could be the unseen, which is those blind spots, that does the individual have enough information for the particular industry that he got hired and started working with? Let's say I'm working in a medical, and maybe individual maybe has experience, maybe not. But interpreting that data and making quality decisions with that data, right? So it has to align with the company's purpose, what they're trying to do. This is very tough. Like the data, that's what I'm saying, and it's very boring. Again, and I'm sure there's a lot of smaller-ish businesses that are listening to this podcast. So for them, it's like, look, I have no time. I don't know what to do with it. So if it's a small business individual, if we scale down from institution to medium-sized business to a company that just got started and maybe they run with a few employees, how they can use that data, whatever amount of that data that they have in a day-to-day business to make better quality decisions?
It's a great question. Just looking at what your competitors are doing and seeing areas on their site is a great place to start. Now, obviously, we don't want to copy what competitors are doing, and what they are focusing on may not be what you as an institution care about, what your audience cares about, and so forth. But if you can even just take that simple data layer, what do they have that we don't? What do we have that they don't? And make that comparison. That's a great way to identify some potential gaps in your content that you can fill. Another one is to look at your social media engagement. I know it's a separate platform from your owned content on your website, but if you can look at what's resonating there and look at the comments that people leave, look at the engagements that they offer there. If they're not engaging, that's going to be very telling that perhaps the content you're putting out there either isn't getting seen or noticed, or it's just not resonating with what they are interested in. If they are leaving those comments, sometimes they'll say, yes, I had this experience. Yes, I had this experience and it wasn't great, or it was awesome. This is something that my friend did, that maybe goes along with whatever your business model is. You can glean a lot just by listening out there organically on social media as well.
So how do you believe the algorithms are shaping the way companies communicating with the audiences out there? And do you believe that those opinions now changing because of those algorithms as well?
Over the years, we've watched people's opinions change. We've watched people's tactics and content change. One thing that's really stayed true is that anything that is created for humans is always going to resonate longer term better and serve you better than anything that you've designed just for an algorithm. I think maybe this is putting me at a little bit of an age slant here, but think 5-10 years ago when writing for SEO was the big thing, where people were plugging in keywords every other sentence and it just became unreadable. That worked for a little while on Google. I mean, your page would go up to number 1, number 2, number 3, and then plummet right away when it was found unusable. So thinking through all of the different algorithmic changes, I'm just thinking of Google off the top of my head. The more that you write for human beings, according to their most recent updates, the more your content will be viewed as relevant, the more it will get picked up by some of these generative AI type, search hubs and so forth. It's the relevancy and the usefulness right now, especially in that world of commoditized content that basically anybody can make, that's going to help you stand out. Social is a different beast. We all know it's pay to play out there, but you can build a strong organic brand by following that same methodology. What do people want? What do people need? How can we answer and meet their expectations?
Yeah. For the brands who are obviously established, if they have a name for them, let's say, they're Stanford or they're one of the big hospitals out there, it's, they just can make a post, they can do a lot of A/B testing. I'm sure they can, there's a place for them to make an error. They can afford that financially, time-wise, maybe, right? And they already have people in place. But it's very hard for, I think, business owners, to, especially when it comes to disrupt, as far as I'm just an observer, right? I'm looking at the industry and I see a lot of brands or companies that are coming up. They're just following the trends that are happening already in the social media. If somebody created a particular video, let's say if it's a TikTok video or a LinkedIn video that went viral, you're going to find 10,000 people or more, millions probably, people doing exactly the same. If it's a dance, if it's a challenge, whatever that might be. So, because that's what the algorithm favors. And that was my question, because there's of course, there's individuals that are real and authentic and they're very strong in terms of their presence and what they can do on social media with their own stories, but there's only a handful. And that's obviously why there's only a handful of very successful companies that can make it on their own. The rest of us would just try to follow the trend. But the people who are trying, and again, you have a background in journalism and English as well, right?
Absolutely.
How do you maybe you can give an advice in terms of maybe your experience? How do you leverage these skills to create a compelling and conversion focused content? Maybe you can give some tips there.
Yeah, this is a good question. And I'll give an example from healthcare. If you work with a hospital on the West Coast and a hospital on the East Coast, chances are they offer generally the same services. They can take care of your heart. They can help with cancer treatments. Excuse me. They can help with cancer treatments. They may be able to deliver your baby, but every group has different providers. Every group has different workflows, different nurses, different frontline staff that greet you when you come in. What you do at this West Side hospital, West Coast hospital, will always look different from what you would create for an East Coast hospital. Different audiences for patients, different providers telling their stories, maybe different research projects that are going on there. So while you might start up here and say, we're going to write a story about heart disease for Heart Month, that can look very different based on what goes on inside the walls of that institution and how they carry that expertise outside the walls into the community. And so I oftentimes see groups just kind of scrambling because, well, our competitor wrote something about Heart Month. We've got to write something about Heart Month too. But if you don't have a strong, compelling story, you're just kind of feeding that beast and diluting your story even further.
How do you find, what's your advice for companies, big or smaller, just coming up, let's say if you're trying to put marketing team, trying to put like a content creation calendar together? There's only so many ideas. I mean, how do you find or maybe generate ideas? Is there a creative ways, maybe it's statements that you do in terms of just generating content ideas? Do you go and do a thorough due diligence research on a certain different places, areas, companies? What's a thought process there?
Yeah, always we see people starting with, okay, we've got to get our CFO on the phone. We've got to get the top surgeon on the phone. We've got to talk with this provider who only has 5 minutes, but they're the only one that can tell this story. And that's not always true. We want to get those individuals' names out there, and that's an important goal. But oftentimes if you go a couple of levels sideways or, work down the chain of command, talk with people who you may not even believe are directly connected with that story, they would probably have a different opinion about, patient care at this location. A nurse would have a very different perspective. The clinician at the bedside would have a different perspective. The individual checking you in, helping to navigate that care long term, will have a different view. So I feel like a lot of the times people get overwhelmed. How are we going to get all of these very busy subject matter experts on the phone? You might be able to whittle down your calendar to say, okay, these one or two important stories really require that busy subject matter expert to talk with, but why don't we get somebody else to give their perspective and really see how it feels from the consumer's point of view when they're coming in, and what questions are they asking at the desk? What questions are they asking on the phone, and building from there.
Mhm.
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So in regards to the internal challenges, because you mentioned also when we connected, you said you would like to talk about the struggles between content coverage in terms of content coverage and inefficiencies that marketing teams and PR teams have, right? So what will be like a proactive steps that can marketing professionals take to streamline the process and enhance collaboration between these departments?
Yeah, great question. Shared calendars are really important. I know a lot of the times in a big institution, it can be complicated, to say the least, to combine all of your ideas together. And in small organizations, when you have a 1 or 2 person marketing team, you don't really have a whole lot of people to kick ideas off of, or a whole lot of time for meetings if you're, divide and conquer kind of group. But if you make a little bit of effort right at the start of the month, right at the start of each week, to just have a 10 or 15-minute touch base, what are the top stories that you need to cover for your department this week? And then go around the virtual circle, discuss those ideas, find where those overlap. And in those overlaps, you might have a wealth of additional content that you can spread out throughout the month. You might find that, hey, team A is covering the same topic just slightly differently than team B. Can we combine our efforts and create one really deep piece that resonates for both of those needs, covering it just once, writing it just once, saving that subject matter expert time, another expert level of review? Really looking for overlaps, really looking for efficiencies in those interview processes, and then thinking through the time that it takes for your internal team to create 3 or 4 pieces, as opposed to just one kind of deep, more robust piece, whether that's a video, whether it's a blog story, a press release, whatever you're looking for. I think we forget sometimes that those pieces can serve more than one purpose, and oftentimes serve more than one audience if you're really strategic about it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So pulling a little bit away from that, and talking about another thing, which is there's so many changes happening in a marketing industry right now, and obviously you as a with Staymates, I'm sure the company's seen a lot of changes. I mean, the company has been around just that perfect time when things are just rapidly changing, especially now in the last 5 to 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you see this situation, evolving into something in the future in terms of just like where the industry going? Where do you believe the trends, the opportunities are for the companies out there?
Yeah, great question. We have seen at Staymates in particular, I mean, the building that we were at starting in, or when we actually just moved buildings in 2023, the tail end, we had a printing press down in our basement for decades. I mean, we started out as a magazine publishing company.
Yeah.
We still actually do publish one magazine in one industry, but really we've taken it over the last 10 years, this mega swing to digital, just like everybody else. We've, pulled back with digital, added more print, whatever the pulse is in each of the industries that we serve. And I think that's something that we just need to remember now as marketers, as writers, as designers who might feel threatened by some of these technological tools coming out, like AI, Chat GPT, Canva, even things like that.
Mhm.
We have to remember that there is always a burst of shiny object syndrome, where it comes out, it's this new thing, it's this, they're going to steal our jobs kind of freak out moment.
Yeah.
And then over the next couple of months, people really start to realize, okay, these are the things that worked. These are the things that can be enhanced. These are the things that didn't work like we expected it to. Now we can really start that learning process of how can this help make my work more efficient in an agency perspective? how can this help serve my clients and make their budgets more efficient as well? So if you really step away from it and think about all of the technological innovation that Gen Z, that millennials, that Gen Xers, that boomers have seen over the course of their time, AI is really a big deal, but it's not the biggest deal that we've come across so far. It's not going to be career ending. It's going to be career changing, absolutely. And it will create different jobs too. We just have to be willing to flex, be willing to try new things, and not throw all of our eggs in that basket of, we have to learn this specific tool because I guarantee in 6 months, it's going to look wildly different from what it is now. The best thing we can do really is just buckle up, start to work it into our processes, and go from there.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely a conversation there. I'm sure, you know, yourself, you come across these conversations. There's two sides of people, probably many sides, but I'll just say two at the moment, which is the people who are embracing it in terms of using AI, and they're like, this is going to be the best thing ever. Or people who are afraid about it's going to disrupt their business, and, you know, people are going to lose jobs, something like that, right? So it is definitely, you know, an opportunity to be explored. And as I say, it's just a tool. So if we look from that perspective, instead of it's coming here to take my job, somebody has to manage that. Still, it's not fully automated. So, and there's new positions being created as we speak today, right? To manage these tools and processes and whatnot. But still, one piece that's always going to be here, which is the human input. So the stories that we can tell, right? And again, because there's human connection on a human level that AI cannot do that at this point, and maybe even never, right? So can you talk about, again, the storytelling, right? And what elements does the story should have to make it compelling for possible customers?
Right, absolutely. In every industry, there are going to be certain things that just are a baseline, that are a foundation that you need to have on your website, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's that pain point that you can solve for your client. Every business needs to have that kind of foundational conversational text. Layer it on with that authority, why you're the best at doing this, why they should come to you. And then the storytelling part just weaves through all of that. So when we say storytelling, it might sound kind of silly. It might sound like something that why would a company invest in this? But this is how people learn from the time you're a child to through adulthood. When you describe a situation that happened to your friend, you're not just going to say, I met this guy. It was not a great day. We broke up. You're going to tell them the whole ordeal, how they were late and you thought about who was going to pay for dinner and he ended up bringing his weird dog that bit you. And, you know, that all of those details make life interesting.
Sorry, so Maria,
Yeah.
the best marketing copies are great stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're not going to find that out in the large language models. It doesn't exist yet. They can't pull it together. Only you can come up with those stories. Only your subject matter experts can. You have to bring that human experience into the content, or you're just pushing out more, bland content for the AI machine to conglomerate together.
So is there a framework that somebody can follow? Because an individual that I had on a podcast, I talked with Kabrina not long ago here in the show, and she talked about kind of step-by-step process. So rather than running and saying, hey, look, I have this $1 million house, I have the private jet, this is my lifestyle, you want that, click the link, right? So kind of just building the story, have you been, unemployed and in this position, this is what I did. So what do you think is the process? Obviously, the word is not the right process because there's many different ways. So what will be, in your mind, what will be the right way for companies to tell their stories in terms of creating that?
Yeah, I always coach teams to follow the Quinton Tarantino model, which is kind of a silly thing, but if you start with the end in mind, where does the reader, where does the viewer want to end up? Do they want to end up in that flashy career? Do they want to end up, a satisfied customer with a new pool, whatever it is? Start there, paint that picture for them, help them visualize themselves there, and then work backwards through the details about how to get there. Whether that's, take this sort of class or get this degree or work with this company, build these blocks, whatever it looks like, put the reader in the driver's seat, show them what they're going to end up with first, and then work back through the details. It's like a modern inverted pyramid.
Yeah, definitely. So And sometimes again, especially now, we in the social media, because it's evolving so fast, and that's why part of it was mentioned before, that people are going and following the trends, if it's TikTok or anything like that, because it's so closer in terms of seeing that success. If it means likes for some people, which I think is crazy, if it's revenue in a company, still, it could be short, but most of the time it's a marathon. It's a long-term investment that a company, an individual has to make in their own brand and their own company to make sure that it fosters and grows over time, over years, right? Um, so how do you communicate that, especially again? So let's say maybe it's not obviously in your position, maybe speak about that, but just your opinion, communicating that to the stakeholders inside of the companies, right? That it's really a long-term investment. So especially for those people that are looking for short, immediate results.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of content marketing, because sometimes when a piece is going to take off, when it's going to be impactful because there is a
Yep.
trend in the news, or because, like you mentioned, a trend on TikTok or what have you. Sometimes you just don't. And when you can get those occasional wins, you have to really look at what is considered a win for this organization who has never blogged or has never made videos before. Showing them those incremental wins can only help you. If you can bring with you strategy to say, this is how we're going to level up next week, next month, it shows that you have the strategy behind you. Bringing the data is always really important as well, especially when you're working with executives and so forth. They like to see those numbers. They like to know what you're doing with the numbers and how you're going to continue that to grow. So showing the quick wins and then showing the long-term strategy. We're here now. This is where we're going to be by XYZ.
So for companies out there, pick a size, right? What would you say? Is there a right format for companies to use in terms of just getting that maybe more instant feedback, more instant result? Video, written, what do you think would perform these days best?
Yeah, yeah. Video generally tends to get those quick hits faster, but I have found in my career anyway that the long form content tends to have the longer shelf life because you can update it. You can update it very easily compared with video, at least right now. You can always make it a new timestamp. You can even adjust the subject matter expert who is the author if you need to. We've got stories that we've written 10 years ago that we've updated just recently with new trending events. So get the quick win sometimes with that video if there's a compelling visual story, but always pair it with that long-term strategy of either blog content, some kind of a text-based, just because right now, who knows what it'll look like in 10 years, but right now, most of those search engines are text-based.
Oh, wow. So, and again, how does somebody can manage that on a multiple channels? I mean, so talking about also Staymate. So can you talk about your services? Because I'm currently on a website, staymates.com. Obviously, it's going to be in the show notes to include. Um, how can someone manage? Because and is there certain platforms that you believe a company should be on or should not be on? Because there was a period of time where I was talking and dealing a lot with the real estate industry, particularly a specific niche, the investing in private properties, apartment complexes. So they wasn't looking at the TikTok before, and now they're all on TikTok because now they started seeing, and that started happening probably like a good year or two ago. So do you see that as well? Like anything in terms of the social media platforms, let's say maybe just kind of being neutral for all the companies, they should be there. They should put a lot of effort, a lot of energy and resources into those platforms rather than spending time on X. Well, again, it's not Twitter, but X platforms.
Yeah, yeah. I would say there's a twofold answer for this question. One is that you don't want to put all of your content on a platform that you don't own. So I almost always recommend either a blog or a website combined together if possible, which you can, even a small business can make for very, very low cost or free. That's one way to always have ownership of your own content. Nobody can tell you to take it down when it's yours, right? And then I would say focus on who is your primary audience that you either want to continue selling to or that you need to grow sales in. And the reason I differentiate that is because in an opportunity like higher ed or healthcare, the bulk of people that you're serving doesn't necessarily span everybody that you could serve. So at a hospital, for example, you could have young parents who are in their, teens to 20s, but you could also have senior citizens who are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s looking for care. You can serve all of those audiences on one website, but not necessarily on one social channel. So look at your primary audience. Who's your priority audience to serve this quarter, this month, this year? Build out at least one channel for them. For young folks, it might be TikTok. For older folks, it might be Facebook. It might be LinkedIn. It could be a combination of both. But I would caution at the end of the day, don't try to be everything to everybody. Don't try to get on every platform. Master one, master that main one, and then start to expand from there.
Again, another great advice. So what do you add here? I mean, it's that's exactly what it is. A lot of it is really feels like a common sense. Obviously, I believe there's a lot of confusion, and definitely a lot of confusion, because there is no other industry, as far as I've been involved in, a different industries, real estate, financial industry, just to mention a few. And when I always come back to the marketing industry, it's just like so much noise, right? And so many different choices and so many different things to do. So just, creating
So
even
much pressure.
exactly, just creating like a solid plan that you can follow, sometimes like it's a work on its own, right? It's just like, because you can get bombarded, especially for somebody who is newer, they're coming back, or whatever that is, right? It's just so much noise and pressure to really understand what the next opportunity is, what tools somebody should be using, what the message they should be telling, what audiences should be they chasing or following or creating. So there's a lot. But thank God there's companies like Staymates, of course, who do a lot of different services. And, for companies who can afford your services, if they're, an established company, Staymates.com. That's where you need to go. Again, you need to get in contact with Maria here as well. All the details are going to be included. We can go on here forever. I mean, this is a huge, huge topic, and there's so many changes and so much is happening in industry right now. I can, ask you another dozen of different questions, right? Just to go into different subjects and talk about what's about to going to happen in the industry, where there's many things coming up to. But I would love for people to get in contact to you again with their questions, because everybody is unique. It's just like fingerprint that we have. Unique company, unique problems, unique challenges. Sometimes it's applicable to all. But that's what you guys can do. So I appreciate everything. I thank you for the time. Thank you for the input, for the information shared today. And again, quick plug in as well. Maria is also going to be talking at the Serious Marketing event that you can go. That's also going to be included in the show notes too. She's going to be presenting virtually, talking about some very interesting stuff. So go and check it. But thank you once again, Maria. And I look forward to catching up with you at some point in the near future as well.
Yeah, thank you, Martinez. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.